Coping 19, brought to you by CDC and the Ad Council.
If you're feeling increasingly lonely right now, you're not alone. It's totally normal. Even though we may not be able to get together in person, connecting virtually with friends and family still gives you a chance to interact with people and may help raise your spirits. Join a virtual book club, set up group text chats, or online video coffee breaks with coworkers.
Find more self-care and coping tips at coping-19.org.
People who follow soccer will certainly tell you the South Americans were always the best at controlling the ball in tight spots, and that's, of course, important in this game. The LA Lazers have a couple of players, Beto and Batata. They are from Brazil, and they are able to create a lot of excitement with their ball dribbling skills.
They sure are, and of course the local fans here, are many of them, I think, are Latins, and they want to see that kind of play. Poli Garcia, also an American citizen, but with, of course, a Latin background, is very, very strong. Another player to watch out for is an Englishman, Stuart Lee, who was leading the club in scoring, and many people felt that Stuart was finished when he left the Portland Timbers in the NASL a few years ago, but he's resurfaced, done very well indoors, and he's very crafty and gets into good positions, so he complements the skill out front by being very clever and getting behind defenders.
So what do you think is important for the Cosmos to do tonight? What did they learn last night as far as a team performance goes that they can carry into tonight's game?
Well, I think they learned the most important lesson, which is that you don't play the way the other team plays. They cannot compete with the San Diegos and the Los Angeles club by playing the way they play. They have to play their own game. Tonight, I expect Los Angeles to come out and put a lot of sort of full-court pressure on the club, particularly in the middle of the field, winning the ball there. They have to find a way to beat that pressure and get their attack going. It requires, once again, a heavy dose of patience.
2 years ago, Los Angeles was 8-40. Last year, 24-24, and now 9-4. They are a team on the move, and tonight's challenge for the Cosmos. Back to the Forum in Inglewood, California, right after these messages on Sports Channel.
Welcome to Good Seats Still Available, a curious little podcast devoted to exploring what used to be in professional sports. Here's your host, Tim Hanlon.
Hey now, how you doing, everybody? It's your pal, Tim. Once again, it's Good Seats Still Available, the curious little podcast devoted to what used to be in professional sports. That's what we like to do around here. And thank you for coming by, and we welcome you, of course, to the proceedings, whether you're new or old or somewhere in between in this fun little journey that we've been on for almost 4 years. We thank you for coming by, and let's get into a fun and a very intriguing conversation this week with our new pal, Johnny Buss. And yes, of course, if you know that surname, you know that is synonymous with professional sports over the last 30 plus years in the Los Angeles metropolitan area. Of course, the Buss family, well known from the founding of the late, great Dr. Jerry Buss, who was, by all accounts, sort of an accidental sports entrepreneur. And as we'll hear in our conversation with Johnny Buss, this goes back to the sports angle of the Buss family, to the late Jack Kent Cooke, obviously well known as almost the generation prior, if you will, and the Buss legacy, picking up where Kent Cooke kind of left off with teams like the legendary Los Angeles Lakers, of course, the most recent NBA champion, world champion at that, helmed by one of Jerry's daughters, of course, the well-known Jeannie Buss, sister to Johnny, and the Los Angeles Kings, of course, and a whole bunch of other things. The Forum was absolutely central, a showcase for all of that, both in the past and not only those teams, but a bunch of others that we're going to kind of get into with our conversation with Johnny. And make no mistake, we've had some previous chats with folks like Ronnie Weinstein and others in the Los Angeles sort of sports realm. And, this is a multi-layered family story, one with tremendous successes, some very interesting challenges, and frankly, a family dynamic that continues to be, like most families, not always clear-cut, not always cordial, not always seeing eye to eye. And we get into some of that, of course, with Johnny, and as it relates to his upbringing, being part of the Buss family, and the just a tremendous success of Dad, the siblings, as how they were part or not part, or encouraged to be or not encouraged to be as part of this budding at the time over the 70s and 80s and 90s sports empire. The white hot spotlight, of course, that comes with that, not only sort of being in the realm of pro sports, but also Los Angeles and the mecca of entertainment. It is an ongoing story. It's a fascinating one at that. And as you're going to discover in our conversation with Johnny in a few moments, just steeped in a lot of the things we like to revel in on this little show. Those are teams and leagues and situations that, for whatever reasons, don't exist anymore. But as you'll hear in our chat, foundational to the successes that the organization is still experiencing, a la with the Lakers and Jeannie Buss, she having gotten a huge early taste of pro sports operations and ownership. As we'll talk about with Johnny, the LA Strings, part of the original World Team Tennis, and then the successor, one of the successors, Team Tennis. That was one of Jeannie's first sports management jobs. Roller Hockey International, the Los Angeles franchise, is part of that. And of course, we've discussed some of that with a few folks in previous episodes. But Johnny, of course, not only sort of a partial part of some of those stories, the Strings in particular, but also on his own, running his own stuff too as part of this empire. In particular, the Los Angeles Lazers of the Major Indoor Soccer League. That little clip there that you heard from December 22nd, 1984, featuring the dulcet tones of Al Trautwig and Seamus Malin on Sports Channel in New York back in the day. That was the Cosmos, the mighty New York Cosmos, yes, in their almost one season. They kind of folded halfway through it in the Major Indoor Soccer League, playing the Los Angeles Lazers. And you heard a little bit of what the Lazers were up to in the 84-85 season, their third season. Johnny at the helm. And you could hear in the description, having started just abysmally in their first season, not at the gate, but also especially on the field. And coming off a season where they were at 500 and making the playoffs. This was a team in the early part of the 84-85 season, as you heard from that clip, on the mend, if you will, and certainly looking to continue to move upward. And we hear the story of the Lazers from the inside. This is the guy, Johnny Buss, who was the president of this organization, the liaison, I guess, to the Buss Corporation, if you will. Obviously, Jerry, a big believer in the MISL, a big believer in Jerry, to legitimize the MISL on a national basis by having a franchise in Los Angeles, the second largest metropolis in the country, and obviously an entertainment capital. And we'll hear from Johnny sort of how challenging it was to run that franchise. And, it being the third or sometimes fourth tier tenant of the fabulous Forum. But also we hear some of the sort of intricacies, I guess, of being part of the Buss family dynamic. And you'll hear, frankly, some tension there. Jeannie getting some looks, if you will, in some of the operations, perhaps maybe that Johnny or his brother, or others in the family not sort of getting, thinking they perhaps should have. Yet at the same time, wanting to see the entire organization succeed. The operation of the Forum, where most of these teams and franchises were domiciled. Part and parcel of the success of that family operation. The LA Sparks, as part of this story too, the original ownership, the founding of it, Johnny part of that dynamic as well, the president of that organization for a whole bunch of years. The WNBA, getting that off the ground when not everybody believed in that proposition and the NBA's backing and all that stuff. We get into all of that, a little bit of the LA Strings, very interesting background stories that I didn't know about. Certainly the LA Lazers of the Major Indoor Soccer League, which Johnny was president of for a bunch of years. And of course, the LA Sparks, the original ownership group that the Buss family led by Johnny was part of. That and a whole bunch of other things, some of it wistful, some of it still a little bit raw, I guess, and a lot of it very inspirational and certainly revelatory. With our conversation with our new pal, Johnny Buss, coming up in just a few moments. Yeah, obviously we know about sort of the strains about the Lakers ownership and all that stuff. We kind of get into that, but we try to stick with the matters at hand as we get into all of those various discussions about the teams as part of that were foundational and for whatever reasons no longer with us, as is our want on this silly little show. It's a fascinating conversation. You will enjoy it. I'm certain of that. And let's get to a couple of sponsors that I think are thematically very well attuned to this conversation, the topics that we get into with Johnny. And let's spin that dial. Let's go to, how about we start with oldschoolshirts.com? Sure. That's P.F. Wilson and his pals in Cincinnati. Oldschoolshirts.com. Make sure you use the promo code GoodSeats. Fantastic T-shirts. If you want 10% off all of your purchases, well, then use that code GoodSeats at checkout to get those savings early and often. And of course, amongst the zillions of shirts across sports and radio stations and retail locations no longer with us, all kinds of nods to the nostalgia of the past, of course, is the beautiful Los Angeles Lazers indoor soccer T-shirt. It's got that great, cool, and very unique Los Angeles Lazers logo on it, and it's a fantastic way to sort of commemorate not only the Lazers, but this conversation, the memory of the Lazers, and the blood, sweat, and tears that Johnny Buss and his team put together in the early years of that MISL franchise. That and much, much more for you at oldschoolshirts.com. Promo code GoodSeats for 10% off all of your purchases. And of course, while you're shopping, how about going over to our pals at streakersports.com as well? They are the purveyor of sports culture, after all. And if you go to the Shop by City tab at streakersports.com, and why don't you just dial up Los Angeles? Well, okay, there you're going to find a ton of great stuff celebrating lots of teams of yore in the Los Angeles metropolitan area. One, of course, we draw your attention to is the 1967 Los Angeles Kings founding year T-shirt, a great 1967 commemoration of the birth of the Kings. Yes, birthed and owned originally by the late Jack Kent Cooke, but obviously that one of the teams that Cooke sold to Jerry Buss and became part of the Buss dynasty in professional sports in Los Angeles. What a great way to celebrate not only that franchise, but of course our conversation coming up with Johnny. And again, that's at streakersports.com. You're going to see a ton of great sports stuff there too. All kinds of great defunct league stuff. And it's a massive and high quality offering waiting for you there. And of course, we've got a promo code for you at that site as well. And of course, that's GoodSeats for 15% off all of your purchases there at streakersports.com, the purveyors of sports culture. Our thanks to both of our fine sponsors this week for their support of the show. And of course, we thank you for listening intently to our conversation coming up. Here it is with Johnny Buss. We talk the LA Lazers. We talk the LA Strings. We talk the LA Sparks. We talk about the Buss family. We talk about all of it. As always, please enjoy. Well, let us start just with the today, because for those sort of who live on another planet and or don't understand the Lakers story, and obviously their the recent championship, and again, congratulations. What's your role today, sort of in the Lakers organization, and what else do you do? And then we'll kind of backtrack into perhaps a little bit of the journey of how you got to where you are today.
Well, currently, basically, I'm retired. So I really don't do much with the Lakers anymore other than sign a few papers and make sure that everybody's doing the right thing as far as the financial side of things. And beyond that, it's now Jeannie Buss's team, basically.
But you're still part of the familial ownership structure of the team, yeah?
Yes, I'm still part of the trust that owns the Lakers. Yes,
right, and obviously that's a big part of the story, right? Because as we dial it back, right, obviously it all starts with your late father, and I guess I think an appropriate sort of way to sort of start that is you're the oldest of the Buss clan. I guess I'd love to know sort of, a little bit, of course, what it was like to sort of grow up, in the Buss household. But I guess I'm really interested most specifically as to sort of when you kind of sort of became aware of the sports thing and how big of a thread it was in your dad's life and what it maybe was going to become.
So as the firstborn boy, I'm 64 now, 1956. When I was born basically on campus at USC, not literally, but he was a professor and still obtaining his doctorate from USC at the time I was born. So since I was a little baby, he was a sports fanatic. I'm telling you that from the time I remember, I have been to every USC football game, baseball game, basketball game. He used to take me around to every sport as much as he could do. As a little kid going to a Dodger game, the Lakers at the sports arena way back when. He was an absolute sports fanatic, but I think that because I was so young and I was dragged to all of these sports and had to sit out in the hot sun at the Coliseum, I started trying to find other things to do rather than watch the games. I just never got into the game itself. And so I would end up watching, the vendors, like the peanut vendors, and how people cheered and, what people liked and what they didn't like. And that ultimately became my education into marketing for sports. But with my dad, he was he was all about winning. He was all about USC winning. He was all about our local Los Angeles teams winning. And he would get very upset when we lost games. 2 or 3 days later, he'd come out of his shell and say, okay, well, we lost that game. But it was a great time. It was wonderful to be able to go sport to sport as a young child and really understand and learn about each and every sport through my father's eyes, especially. And not only that, I got to watch him graduate as a doctor from USC. Not literally, I was only 1 year old. But he had moved to Boston. He became not a Celtics fan, but he certainly enjoyed going to the Celtics games. And but he didn't like the cold, so he moved back to Los Angeles. And, lo and behold, he started working in real estate, made a fortune, and his early days, he had the person Dennis Murphy, came to his office and said, "Hey, how would you like to buy a tennis team?" And of course, as a sports fan, he jumped at the chance.
Yeah, so let's back up there for a second, because USC obviously a big part sort of this, right? So a couple of things to unpack there. So first of all, I think not many people sort of know or remember or even understood that your dad kind of was academically focused on the field of chemistry, right? He was on the the staff at USC in the chemistry department. He got his PhD in it. Would you say he stumbled into real estate, or it wasn't his sort of original career idea, right?
No, I don't know that chemistry was actually his desired career, but because he was so good at it and because he got through school so quickly with it, there were aerospace companies that wanted him to join them. And so he that's why he ended up in Boston. I forget which aerospace company that was functioning out of Boston at that time. But when he finally came back to Los Angeles, he started with, I think it was McDonnell Douglas. And I think he worked with TRW for a little bit. And he started working on rockets for rocket fuel for satellites and things that the government and NASA was putting up. But then they switched him to military rocket fuel. And that's when he said, I don't want anything to do with killing other people. And so he started talking around to others who worked with him. And he said, gosh, if we all pooled $1,000, we could put a down payment on this little apartment building in West Los Angeles. And I think it was like a 6-unit or 8-unit apartment complex. And they all said, yeah, we should do that. And he started pulling everybody's money together. Everybody had their own job of either painting or gardening or pool cleaning, whatever it might have been. And that's when it all started. This was in the, of course, early 60s and actually late 50s, early 60s. So it was a good thing. And he didn't want to stop there because now all of a sudden he was in charge of owning property with investors. And the next step was to buy another building. So he got more investors around, mostly aerospace people that he worked with, and started investing in another building and then another building and another building and more investors. And, soon he had well over 300 investors and, he started moving into the Santa Monica area, especially to the point where he was able to now actually construct and build new apartment complexes in Santa Monica. And it was all good, everything was going well until about 1973, or I think it was, when Dennis Murphy knocked on his door and said, boy, you're doing very well. How would you like to buy a tennis team? And that's when it all came together.
So that's very interesting. So there is that intersection then between Dennis and your father on that. And if we recall some of our conversations with Dennis, right, as was sort of par for the course, if you will, with the ABA, the WHA, the WFL, World Team Tennis, a lot of it was, I don't want to say circling around the marks in a various market, right? But looking at franchises and selling those franchises maybe first and foremost before maybe even the sport or the integrity or the rules or any of that kind of stuff, right? So I suspect that a little bit of that Dennis Murphy magic, right, was, polishing up the ego a little bit too, perhaps, and maybe getting your dad to go from, sports fan and just, personal side interest to something more substantial and, God forbid, professional.
Yeah, well, that's how Dennis Murphy got his nickname as Brooklyn Bridge Murphy, because he could sell pretty much to anybody. And as the story goes, Dennis was actually talking to other people in Los Angeles at that time, and the people that he talked to all declined his offer to buy a tennis team. And he just happened to be reading the paper that day. And there was an article about my father, and the article stated how, he went from one apartment building to maybe a dozen at that time. And Dennis looked at that and said, "Oh, well, here's a guy that they talk about his love of USC and the Trojan sports, and he might be a good guy to talk to." So that's how Dennis found out about my father, was through the newspaper article about real estate.
All right, so two questions. Number one, why tennis, and why not perhaps something else? Because obviously tennis was part of a whole bunch of other various pro sports exploits. And I guess secondly, where are you in all of this and your awareness or care, frankly, for any of it?
Well, the second question first. I was in high school, and I was working after high school in the mail room over at the real estate office. And, I'd always stop in to see my dad. And, my dad just said, "Hey, I got a strange phone call today, and I'm meeting this guy, and he told me about it." And I go, "Gosh, that's interesting. A tennis team. Don't they play individual? It's not really a team, is it?" He says, "Yeah, but they're putting together a team sport. So let's see what he has to say." Now, as far as the first question, I think my dad was just thirsty for anything that knocked on his door. I think that if Dennis had come in and said, "Hey, we have a hockey franchise for you to buy," that he might have listened to that. But I don't think he was truly financially capable of going into maybe hockey or basketball at that time. But this seemed like, wow, I can get into sports for, gosh, whatever he was selling it for at that time. I think he said that it was $1 million to buy a team. And my dad said, "Well, how about if I pay you a lot less than that? But maybe I can help." And, it was actually maybe two salesmen talking to each other at that time. And I think my dad got a huge discount on the Los Angeles franchise.
Yeah, well, probably also too a discount from what, right? A discount off. But I digress. But I'm gonna guess though that this also kind of it's indicative, right? And this is not sort of meant to be sort of a complete just a story about your dad, right? Because I want to get into sort of your lean forward into the sports stuff too. But I get the sense that the sports thing it became another sort of, society kind of centric thing, right? It's one thing to have a growing and successful real estate investment entity and being well known as a successful real estate entrepreneur and investor and all the stuff that comes from all of that, right? But it's quite another thing, and we've seen and heard this time and time again. There's a big sort of ego trip that comes along, especially in the 70s, right? With regards to professional sports, right? Of any kind, frankly, because there's a sort of a certain cachet there, right? There's a certain carte blanche there. There's the entertainment and celebrity essence or adjunct there too. I'm guessing, right? Your dad's probably got some aspect of some of that he's intrigued by with this team, not just to own a team.
Absolutely. I mean, my father at that time was basically separated from my mother, and he was dating the young girls and going out to clubs, and he invested in a few motion pictures at that time. He for a very short period of time, I think it was like 3 months, he had an office at Paramount Studios because he was working with investing in a few pictures, so he got his producer credits. But
so he, and
but
business-wise, he had a wandering eye beyond what he was doing real estate-wise.
yeah, he certainly liked that Hollywood lifestyle, and I'm sure that the movies that he invested in never made him any money. Probably lost money in that quite extensively, probably. But
you're saying the movie Black Eye with Fred the Hammer Williamson was not Academy Award-winning material, huh?
Not quite.
And for our listeners, you can look that one up. I think it was 1974 or 75.
That's correct. That's correct.
Fred Williamson in a star turn in Black Eye.
Yes, exactly. But of course, they filmed that about a year earlier, and it was about at the same time that this whole team tennis thing was going on. So there's no question that my dad wanted to get into the Hollywood lifestyle and stay there. He enjoyed it. He loved. I don't want to bring up other names, but it was kind of like the downfall of the Don Sterling thing, where Don was a real estate magnate and a prominent lawyer in Los Angeles, but still he was only just Don Sterling until he wanted to get into sports with my father. So, my dad was instrumental in negotiating the buyout of the San Diego Clippers at that time for Don Sterling. So once Don Sterling did that, of course, Don became or wanted to become Mr. Hollywood. He wanted to buy himself into the Hollywood lifestyle. And that was the best way to do it, through sports. Everybody had a love for sports. So in the Hollywood lifestyle, either you had to be involved in motion pictures or sports.
All right, so let's get into sort of your sort of journey into sports, because I'm assuming it wasn't sort of necessarily sort of a straight line, right? Because we're talking about being in the mailroom in Dad's company. You're being exposed to all kinds of stuff. Obviously, when you're sharing sports adventures with him, you sort of see an eye towards the mechanics and the business around it versus, say, maybe the competition or the actual teams and the players and all that kind of stuff. But help us draw a line from sort of that sort of early awareness, perhaps, frankly, around your father's early awareness around pro sports into, I guess, we'll get into some of your first professional tastes in that. I'm assuming this thing called the Forum was part of it, and sort of the circus tent, I guess, of the things that were part of all of that were probably maybe catalytic in all of that for you.
Yeah, well, I mean, it was exciting. I mean, being 16 years old and just being thrown into this when, it really did feel like an overnight situation where, hey, Johnny, I'm buying a tennis team, and guess who's part owner? Johnny Carson. Oh, wow, this is really crazy. And he says, yeah, we're going to play at the Los Angeles Sports Arena, and it's going to be really exciting. You're going to be around, these great tennis names, Billie Jean King, and people like that. It was kind of so fast and furious, especially for a 16, 17-year-old at that time. I was, instead of taking my date to the movies, I got to take my date to a tennis match and give her the VIP treatment, and say, oh, yeah, my father owns this team, that kind of thing. And that was kind of fun. But again, it was more, I wasn't as interested in the sport itself as I was the marketing of it all. And I would talk to my dad, and he'd say, wow, wasn't that a great match? And I said, yeah, Dad, but you know what? If the lighting was a little bit different over in that far corner, and if we did, I would always talk about everything else other than the sport itself or the game that was played. So he started to confide in me as maybe the first marketing person that he ever hired, you know, and it felt good to be so young. Of course, some of my ideas were probably silly as hell, but it was really a great deal of fun, and meeting all the tennis players, traveling around. We got to travel, you know, all these wonderful places where they had team tennis, and as you know, it was a very loose league. And some of the games were played outdoors. Most of them were played indoors. Some of them were played in large arenas. Some were played in obscure gyms around the country. So it was quite an education for sure, not only for me, but especially for my dad, because he and his intelligence, he basically became the leader of the pack. You know, yes, we had you know, gosh, I forget who was obviously Dennis and who was it? I forget, but his education through team tennis was amazing. The only problem that he had was that he fell in love with the sport. He loved team tennis. He loved the players. And so what he ended up doing was as one team was maybe faltering and wanting to leave the league, he would end up either getting one of his friends to buy one of the teams, or he would buy another second team. And I think at one point we owned 3 or 4 team tennis teams, but of course not directly, but certainly indirectly through one of his friends, meaning that his friend was just this figurehead of the team, but actually my dad ran it.
Well, so I got to stop you there. That's interesting. Are we breaking news 50 years later here on this? Because I don't know if that was. I don't know if that's widely known. Any particular teams and situations that you might remember around that?
Well, sure. You know, the real estate company was called Mariani Bus, and Frank Mariani was the Mariani of the real estate empire. And Frank Mariani was just so happened to be the owner of the San Diego Friars. And interesting enough, my uncle, Dennis Hall, was the owner of the Orange County, what was it?
Were the Rackets?
The Orange County, no, that was Phoenix Rackets, was it?
Oh, I think you're right. I'll look it up. Go ahead. Keep going.
Yeah, wouldn't you know, I forget. But,
interesting. Okay.
Was it? Yeah, I can't remember. So there's 3 right there. And then I think we had the last one was I think it was in Indiana, Indiana Loves or something like that.
The Indiana Loves, which started in their lives in Detroit, and I think the Anaheim Oranges is what you're referring to. Where
it was the Oranges, yes.
Which was the converted Soviet, or the Soviet national team. Yeah, there's a whole sort of thing there. But this is very interesting, right? So you're kind of, it seems like your dad's like angling on sort of owning as many of the Southern California franchises, well, then, and plus Indiana. But that's interesting. So that wasn't publicly known, or kind of was it, or was it sort of an unkept secret, or what?
I think it would have been easy to figure it out. So I don't think it was a huge secret. However, it wasn't publicly stated. Of course not. And I think he even lent money to the San Francisco team or the Oakland team, one of those, in order to keep them alive. He was loaning money. So, he loved World Team Tennis. He really, really loved it. He had a great rapport with the players, and obviously, ultimately we had Chris Everett in there. I ended up getting engaged to Diane Frumholtz, who played both for, surprisingly, the Indiana team, the San Diego team, and the Los Angeles team. So we got traded quite often, but it was really because my dad was able to control each and every one of those teams. He got to move around the players to fit just to make it fit and work, because he did not want the WTT to fail. He loved it too much. But at that time where it was like, oh, this is really getting a little too much, where he's buying or he's controlling these other teams, he's lending money to other owners. And that's exactly the same time that Jack Kent Cooke said, hey, he came to my dad and said, you should be playing at the Forum if you really want to, if you want to join the big time, why don't you play at the Forum? And of course, they worked out a deal. And within a year after playing at the Forum, he said, hey, can I talk to you about a major purchase, which would be the Lakers, Kings, and the Forum itself.
That's very interesting. So in essence, this whole LA Strings experience, right? Not only was him falling in love with the sport, or at least the league and all of that, but also his introduction. So I guess I didn't even realize that first season of the team, you guys were in the Memorial in the LA Sports Arena.
Yeah. And Johnny Carson was our host for the games.
No kidding. All right. So, what, but obviously that all came to a crashing halt 5 years into the experiment. We just did an episode a couple of weeks ago with a documentarian and book writer, both of which are soon to come out, Stephen Blush, on the history of the World Team Tennis thing. And it's interesting because, and here's a great case in point, right? It was so seminal to a bunch of other things. Like, if but for World Team Tennis, you wouldn't have some of these other things, including the legacy of Billie Jean King and all that stuff. But yet there's so little written about it, so very little sort of discovered about it. And yet here we are talking about perhaps the foundational elements of what, as we get into, became a gigantic LA-based sports empire through your dad's efforts and love of this team and league.
Oh, not only that. I mean, the influence that my father had in American sports in general, where, prior to 1979, sports in America was great. Everybody loved it, but it was time to go into the next level. For so many years, players were underpaid. Coaches were certainly underpaid, and tickets were still cheap. But as television grew and the thirst for American sports on television grew, my father was right there, and it was his education from World Team Tennis that gave him the education once he took over the Lakers. And wonderfully, he had Magic Johnson to start out with, and he changed the face of sports After that first year, we won the first championship in 1979, 1980. And, he came into the league meetings now as a first-year championship owner. And if that didn't give him the confidence to go into the league meetings and start demanding changes, whether it was in rules, whether it was in finance, whether it was just in the marketing itself, he had a very loud voice, and he was very well educated and schooled from WTT. I'm telling you that it was an incredible education for him. And I mean, he already had the intelligence and the smarts to do this. But once he got through the education of WTT and went right into the NBA and also the NHL, he said it was a little more difficult to make changes in the NHL. He said, "Boy, those owners are really tough." But
your head must have been spinning, right? Because I know that the Strings were the last ever champions of WTT in 1978, and there's a great photo that we've used a couple of times on our website of your dad holding what looks like the banner that was, I guess, either going to be raised, or I don't know where it was going to be raised because it was the end of the season or whatever. I think Chris Everett and Elena Stasi were sort of lovingly looking on to him, the patron saint, I guess. But so your head must have been spinning. I wonder if your dad at the time knew that was going to be the end of World Team Tennis, in any of that stuff. And then I guess too, another sort of part of the question I would get to would be, it feels to me that not only was sort of the Lakers in that conversation, but he was pragmatically looking at the Forum, maybe perhaps almost first and foremost as maybe the crown jewel of this potential transaction with Jack Kent Cooke.
Yeah, well, once he got his foot into the Forum with the Strings, it was all over. He and Jack Kent Cooke really hit it off very well. They became very close buddies at a very short amount of time. And I think that's why Jack Kent came to him first and said, "Hey, do you want to do this?" But again, throughout that whole period of time, my dad was trying to figure out how American sports was best served for the fans and best served for the athletes. And he started developing strategies to, because he knew players who had money at one time and just blew it all because they didn't know what to do with their money. No, they didn't know how to invest it. And I'm telling you, there were probably 100 tennis players that would ask my dad, "Hey, what investment should I do? How could I make more money? How can I do this? How can I do that?" He became the father to so many players because at that time you couldn't trust agents, you couldn't trust a lot of people, sometimes players couldn't trust their own family. And a lot of them squandered their money or just lost it. Nobody was protected by injury. And he was very instrumental in making sure that players in all sports did the right thing with their money. And he would actually talk to I hope I don't get in trouble here, but he would actually talk to USC football players on, hey, when I go pro, what should I ask for? Should I, what should I do? What agent should I have? He was just a go-to person for so many athletes, and especially obviously in tennis. One of the reasons that Jimmy Connors even came into the league at that time was because my dad told him, hey, you can make a lot of money in the WTT if you do it right, and I can show you how to do it. It was just amazing what my dad figured out as far as getting the players on his side. And of course, one of the first things that he did when he bought the Lakers was he said, "Hey, Irvin Johnson, you're pretty good. You're going to be maybe the greatest of all time. How about if I pay you $1 million a year to play for the Lakers?" And of course, that sent shockwaves throughout American sports. Every owner in every league probably tried to get a hold of him and say, "Hey, you know what? You're going to ruin sports if you do something like that." And my dad said, "Oh no, it's deferred payments and it's part of an investment and it's this and that. It actually doesn't cost that much money to pay Irvin $1 million if you do it right." And they said, "Yeah, but we can't do that. So you're going to have all the players. You're going to be able to take any player you want. Let's start putting caps on on player salaries. Let's start making rules and regulations against people like Jerry Buss who are going to ruin American sports." So, he in 1980-81, he was really slammed by a lot of other owners, not just in the NBA, not just in the NHL, but the people that he met in NFL, they all said, "Hey, you know what? You got to be very careful, Jerry, because you're going to start a precedent that is going to ruin sports. We can't afford to pay these players that much money." And, he just kept saying, "Hey, yes, you can. Yes, you can with the right investment and the right deferred payments and with this and with that." So it became really a nightmare for everybody. He didn't know if he was making a mistake. He didn't know if he was doing the right thing. All we knew is that, Magic Johnson was now the wealthiest player in America, making $1 million a year.
Well, but 5 championships and the Showtime era during the 1980s, right? That probably didn't hurt, right, in terms of one's clout on that issue, right?
It was all part of the publicity. It was all part of Showtime. It was, wow, look at this guy. After his first year winning a championship, now he's instrumental in NBA politics, and now they're making rules and regulations to stop or to slow down Jerry Buss and what he's trying to do. This guy could win championships for the next 20 years if we let him. So they had to put in the rules and regulations to stop people like Jerry Buss.
So, okay, but I also give my sense, though, too, and this certainly harkens back to some of our conversations with Ronnie Reinstein in a couple of number of episodes ago, that there's also some other economics sort of at play, perhaps that your dad is sort of smartly sort of recognizing maybe a little ahead of the hoi polloi, shall we say, in the 80s. And I suspect, too, given what you suggested earlier about what your eye was on when you're going to these games and not, dating star tennis players and the like, the business of it, right? And I think one of those things, or I don't think, I am sure certain is the forum itself, right? You guys and I harken back to the conversation with Ronnie, you guys were all part of sort of, I don't know, I will say almost maybe kind of pioneering some of what is today sort of generally understood as key revenue streams, right? Like, so for example, we'll get into the Lazers in a minute, but I look at some of the old LA Lazers games on the old USA cable network and Prime Sports and some of these other things. And if I'm not mistaken, which I certainly could be, it looks like the forum for those games, when you're not staring at the empty seats, but I digress, had actually some of the first sort of banners from corporate sponsors that I even remember on the dasher boards, right? 1984, I don't think that was a common practice in the MISL for sure, and maybe in some of the other indoor sports as well.
Yeah, well, see, that's, when you get to the point where, as we came into the Forum Lakers and Kings, the Forum was the one that was, the Kings and the Forum were losing money. So my dad had to really try to think, in order to keep the Forum moving, we need more events. And now he became, this manager of the Forum and tried to figure out how to make more money with the Forum. And we needed more events. And so immediately, here I am in college at USC, and he said, hey, I need you to start promoting concerts and special events. And so that's what I did. I hate to say it, but I quit school and I came to work as a concert promoter at the Forum. And I'm not sure that I regret that, but it started out okay until the local promoters in Los Angeles decided to boycott the Forum because we had an in-house special events office now, department. So immediately my dad said, I think we did maybe 3 or 4 concerts, and I think a rodeo or something like that. And he came in and he said, well, Johnny, we basically have to dissolve your department because we're going to get boycotted. And I can't afford to lose the acts that they bring, at that time, a Led Zeppelin or Rolling Stones or anything like that. And he couldn't afford to lose those people. So again, I got kicked out, and I moved back I moved to Las Vegas to take over his real estate operation up there, which was, quite extensive. And that was now, I'm gone for 2 or 3 years doing real estate. But he still needed more events at the Forum. And that's when Mr. Earl Foreman came to him and said, hey, look, we really need a Los Angeles franchise, and we'd love to play in the Forum. Would you like to buy a team? All
right. Well, let's talk about that, right? So the Major Indoor Soccer League, right, at that time. So this is, the MISL, as we've talked about in a number of other episodes, right, was quite a phenomenon and really started to gain some steam as the 1980s kind of started. It got its first couple of years in the late 70s. The outdoor NASL was starting to sag and collapse under its own sort of profligate spending, weight, star players, and lack of television and all that kind of stuff. And in various pockets, St. Louis, for example, just a frenzy, right? To have sellout after sellout. It was in a bunch of markets quite a phenomenon, and it was sort of everything sort of all rolled up into one, right? It was soccer, which was skill, right? It was fast paced, which was exciting. It was spectacle for sure. The Lewicki brothers and others bringing exploding disco balls or whatever they were, and the pregame hype and all that kind of stuff. How does the MISL get onto your dad's radar, and how does Earl? I mean, is this just another case of, hey, Jerry Buss is doing some interesting stuff out there. I'm gonna, like Dennis Murphy did a decade earlier. I'm just gonna go make a pilgrimage and make my case. I gotta think that your dad was being approached by just about every new league and concept in sports and related at that time, besides just the MISL.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I remember a case where a group of people came in because they wanted to do indoor ski jumping, and they wanted, my dad. They wanted the forum, and they wanted, they couldn't afford the forum, so they were trying to talk my dad into giving free rent so that they could come in and do this ski jumping championship. And now, yes, everybody in America, and maybe a few outside of America, came to him hoping that they could bring their event to him, and he would have something to do with it. He was now on. He was one of the more famous young owners and players in American sports, and of course, everybody was coming to him, wanting to do events in the forum and wanting him to partake in it financially. So. Of course, he turned down tons of people. Now, why he went with MISL, I'm not quite sure. But again, it seemed like a fun sport for him. It gave him 12 to 20 possible dates in the forum. And, the first person he called was, "Hey, Johnny, how you doing in the real estate up in Las Vegas? Do you want to come back to Los Angeles and run an indoor soccer franchise?"
All right, so walk me through that a little bit then. So, like, how do you receive that phone call or that conversation, and then what do you tell me how it goes from there, and what you decide to do to get involved, because. Were you a soccer fan? Did you know anything about the MISL? Did you care? What?
Yeah. Well, it was really interesting because the whole real estate operation in Las Vegas was an investment, and it was time to get rid of that investment. And he was worried because I had, his son was taking care of all this real estate, and now he's already kicked me out of the forum and concerts. And now he's getting ready to kick me out of real estate in Las Vegas. So I think he felt like, gosh, you know what? This might be something that Johnny would really enjoy doing. So I did get the call. He said, let's meet down in Palm Springs and let's see what we can do. So we met at his hotel in Palm Springs, the Ocotillo Lodge. And of course, my good buddy, Ronnie Weinstein, was there with me driving down there going, "What do you think this is all about?" And so we met with him, and he said, well, and he explained the whole thing as Earl explained it to him. And he said, the first thing you need to do is you need to fly to St. Louis and watch the Steamers game. So Ronnie and I flew to St. Louis and watched the game. And, now we understand what this is all about. But when we watched the game, we became immediate fans of the game. I mean, immediate fans of the game. It was fast-paced. It was as exciting as basketball. It was it had the hockey flavor to it, and certainly it was soccer. A lot of people would dispute that, but it was soccer. And so when we got back, I said, Dad, this is an amazing sport. This is unbelievable. It is so much fun. And we're now talking as fans, which I kind of hate to do that because, as I said earlier, I was really rarely involved in the games as I watched them, whether it was USC football or even the Lakers. The sports was never my big thing. I was in drama at USC. I was a musician. I had a band. So I was more situated for the concerts. But I became a fan of the MISL, and I said, Dad, you got to do this. We got to do this. And he said, well, we're only going to do it if we can keep expenses down. You have about $750,000, and $500,000 of that has to be for the players, and then you can use the rest for your staff and marketing. And I God, 750,000. Can we do that? And I said, well, what are the other teams spending on their player budget? And he said, well, they're usually around anywhere from $500,000 to $1 million. And I said, well, okay, then we can field a team that would be decent. So as it turns out, now that we went ahead, bought the team, we're now involved. We've got probably less than a year to put it all together. We had to find a coach. Ronnie became the general manager. And we started trying to put together a team that would fit for under $1 million. And under $500,000. As it turns out, I think we were the only team under $1 million our first year there. I don't think any team in the MISL had a player budget of under $1 million. And here we only had $500,000 to spend. Of course, maybe that was the reason we only won. What was our record?
8 and 40 that first year.
8 and 40. Okay. So, it was hard to swallow. It was tough. But you know what? You can't quit. You've got to keep going. You try to ask for more money for your players, but we really didn't get that. We were still under budget. But thank God that we had a great coach in Peter Wall who he was going to do the best he could with whatever he had. And we trusted him. I think he fielded actually a very competitive team the first year, even though we had lost those games. Many of those games were in one goal. We just.
No, there were some great names in soccer history around that time. Clyde Best was on that team, a former guest on our show. Don Tobin certainly.
Mr. Hairdo, yeah.
Paulie Garcia, right, who played in the old American Soccer League and lit it up. I think he was your leading scorer that year, right? So, but I guess see, clearly I'm touching on a few names that you remember. Maybe we should get into that. But I guess I'm really curious, and I remember watching. I think it was your first ever game on the USA Network. Late night, I think it was against the Arrows, if I'm not mistaken. I guess I wonder going into this if you thought that fielding a competitive team on that somewhat limited budget was going to be relatively easy? Or, at what point did you sort of realize, wait a minute, this may be a little bit more challenging talent-wise to sort of keep up with this grueling schedule and this not necessarily so new league? Because this is, 3 or 4 years into the league's existence at that point.
Yeah, well, you got to remember that, I have, the only experience that I have is sitting next to my father throughout WTT, sitting next to my father in the early stages of the NBA and NHL. And, now here I am, running my own franchise and trying to do the best I can with the limited budget that we had. And playing in Los Angeles, which is a difficult market to begin with. It was as if somebody said, hey, John, why don't you just tie yourself onto these railroad tracks and wait for a train to come? It was very difficult emotionally. 25 years old or something at that time. And it was a lot to take on. We were fighting the traditionalists, and who didn't like indoor soccer, and it was an incredible period of time that first year, and I was disappointed that we only won 8 games, but more importantly, I couldn't understand why I became a fan of this game so deeply when I haven't been a fan of any sports. So, now all of a sudden I had to play 2 roles. I had to play the fan and I had to play the owner, and it was very, very difficult. So, at that time, there was another part of this equation that not only did the Forum need more events, but my dad had started Prime Ticket, and he was thinking, gosh, maybe we could get some games, some MISL games onto Prime Ticket. That was always in the back of his mind, that, he would have programming. So, he just said, hey, John, just stick with it. Don't worry about it. You'll do better next year. This is your first year. Let it go. Just try to do better. Try to find more players or whatever. And I'm telling you, it was to the point where after that first year, I grew up so quickly. And now getting ready to start our second year, my dad basically said, you know what? This is now your team. I don't want to hear about it. If you have problems with anybody, you deal with it yourself. I have too much to do. So, when I told Ronnie Weinstein that, hey, we have my dad's support, but we have 0 minutes to talk to him. So all of a sudden, my mentor was gone. Now I was completely on my own running the Lazers. Without cooperation from the Forum, for some reason, the Forum became, it was always the Lakers and Kings building. And, here's the Lazers trying to squeak in and trying to get a few promotions, trying to get Chick Hearn to talk about it on a Laker game, or trying to, and I remember one time I did come out on the NHL ice during a Kings game and try to tell everybody, hey, come out to the Lazers game, and, and hearing laughter in the crowd. And it was really tough. It was just a really tough 2 years, but that's when I could be a fan and say, hey, well, I'm not giving up because I love this game. This is too much fun. I really thought that the indoor soccer game was going to be big time. Maybe not as big as the NHL, but it was going to be right behind on their heels. And of course, it costs a lot less to run a franchise in MISL. So, over time, ticket sales would go up, and our revenue would go up, and the league would get stronger. We really had hopes, high hopes, and we stuck it out until, truthfully, after the third season, I basically said to my brother, you know what, I think you need to take over the team because I just cannot cooperate or get cooperation from people that worked at the Forum. It was so difficult, and we started with our first season. I think we started with 12 Monday nights. It was like, well, can we get at least, some weekend dates? Oh, well, those are reserved for concerts and, obviously whatever else was bigger than the MISL. But as it turns out, those were only reserved dates. So as our season went on and all of a sudden there was empty Friday nights and Saturday nights at the Forum, I was like, hey, this is crazy to reserve seats or reserve dates for concerts or whatever. And then the concerts fell through. That Saturday night would go empty. And it was just really disappointing and very hard to accept that for the first 3 years of our existence, we just didn't get the dates that we needed in order to boost ticket sales.
All right, what's this? NordVPN, fantastic. Friends, the world of the internet gets crazier and less secure by the day, it seems. And privacy is a huge issue when you're traveling, perhaps even using Wi-Fi, right? You never quite really feel comfortable in knowing that, your internet connection is secure, that you're not being tracked, that your data, frankly, is not being accessed and unwittingly pilfered and used for other purposes that you don't want it to be used for. And that's where virtual private networks, he says, comes in very handy. And the best out there of late is our friends at NordVPN. That's Nord VPN. Let's say you want to, you're traveling and you want to access a streaming service when you're in another country. This is a great way, a virtual private network, to access those services without sort of being bumped out because your computer device thinks that you're living in another country. If you use Wi-Fi, public Wi-Fi at that, on a regular basis, you know how dicey that proposition can be. It's convenient, sure, but when you're sitting in a lobby of a hotel or a Starbucks, you think it's secure, but are you really sure? Encrypting your data, very important when you're sending an important file, let's say a tax form to your accountant. And file sharing. You've got a project that you're trying to share with your team. Even in a Slack environment or whatever, those things can get easily sidetracked and or intercepted without the benefits of a virtual private network. And again, NordVPN is the best that I found out there. And I can't tell you how not only important a VPN is, but how probably the best that I've seen to date is our friends at NordVPN. And of course, I wouldn't be telling you about all this unless we had a special offer for it. Of course we do. It's a special holiday deal for every purchase of a 2-year plan, and it's relatively well priced. I think you'll find it itself a good deal. You'll get 4 additional months for free when you go to nordvpn.com/goodseats. That's Nord, N-O-R-D, V as in Victor, PN.com, nordvpn.com/goodseats. And don't forget to use the coupon code GOODSEATS at checkout. And again, you're going to get 4 additional months for free when you purchase a 2-year plan. NordVPN, it's the best that I found out there in the world of virtual private networks. Check them out, NordVPN. Thank you for your support of the show. And now, back to said show. You were, incrementally growing this thing, right? So, the first year was the just the miserable record and barely, I don't think even 4,000 paid attendance. But you did make strides. I mean, the next 2 seasons, right? You went 500. I mean, 24 and 24 each of those seasons, made the playoffs in each of those, and the attendance by the end of that third season was actually over 5,000 a game, right? Which, again, relative, right? I mean, obviously it was near the lower end of the MISL's attendance roster. However, a tough market, right? And I guess besides the dates and the third, or maybe you're even describing fourth class citizenship when it comes to dates and that kind of stuff, right? I know this from personal experience, being not even 1 season long season ticket holder of the old New Jersey Rockets in the 82-83 season when I was a kid. The Meadowlands Arena, called, before it was called Brendan Byrne Arena, or maybe it was called
right.
too,
Uh-huh.
right? Brand new arena, but then it was the Nets and the Devils and then these Monday night games, right, for these Rockets. I guess the question in there is, in those 3 years before you sort of handed over the reins, it's clear that you didn't have a lot of money to work with. I would assume in terms of marketing, right? And I guess that's the question, because I have to think that there were a number of synergies, or at least perceived synergies, at least in the back office, so to speak, right? The fact that you can get on the ice to at least make a spiel, right? That doesn't, you can't do that without sort of having, winking and nodding of the ownership and there's got to be some things. There's some stationery or whatever, right? The ability to get on Prime Ticket, that's not something you can just sort of. So there are some incumbent advantages there, being in the building, of Showtime and all of that. But I guess I'm just really curious is how you were marketing the product, because you were a fan, right? It seems like the go-to for Ed Tepper and Ed Al was to take everybody to St. Louis, right? Because that's how people fell in love with the game.
Yeah.
But not every place was St. Louis. How do you market this? Because it's at once it's a sport, but it's also it's a spectacle, right? It's entertainment, right? With the music and the introductions, which were quite in the vanguard at that point. You're in the middle of one of the biggest, if not the most attractive entertainment markets in the country, which itself has got to be a challenge. How do you market this thing? Did it change? Did it evolve? And what do you say to people as you're marketing this thing?
Well, I tried to go to my dad with help, asking for help. And he basically said, there's not much I can do, you just play it out. And if you need something, let me know. So I said, well, first of all, I would like a bigger budget. It'd be nice to have more money. And he gave us a little bit more money, but certainly not what I asked for. And he said, once your ticket sales get up, and there's some strength in the league, then maybe we can give you some more money. But other than that, if you need something from the Lakers, the Kings, let me know. And so I asked, well, can we get some commercial spots on Laker broadcasts and Kings broadcasts? He said, well, I'll work on that. And yes, we did get a few, not many, but we did get a few. We did get some mentions, but Ronnie and I would sit there at midnight and say, what the hell are we going to do? And I said, there's only one thing to do. We're going to have to be politicians and knock on doors. And Ronnie and I used to go out on weekends to every park in Los Angeles and try to promote our sport. We'd say, hey, have you been to a Lazers game yet? It's really exciting. It's really fun. You got to come on out. And we were basically just hawking and barking our way to a better attendance. We really worked hard. I mean, this is how I learned about guerrilla marketing and grassroots marketing. We really did our share of running around Los Angeles, trying to talk people into coming to games. But the most interesting thing was my dad had just bought this famous house called Pickfair. It was Mary Pickford and Douglas Fairbanks, huge silent film stars of Hollywood, very famous home. And I said, Dad, there's one more thing I'd like to do. Can I use your house? He said, for what? I said, those investment groups that you used to do with real estate? I'm going to invite 50 people a night to come to Pickfair, and I'll give them a tour if they buy a season seat. And basically we just invited as many people as we could fit in there, which was about 50 people a night, and as many days as I could possibly get until my dad said, hey, Johnny, you got to remember that I still live here. You can't make this into a conference room, I do live here. So, but I think we probably did a dozen or more of these Pickfair tours, and we actually ended up selling these people. Gosh, we probably got a good 300 season seats off of this little promotion thing. But as these people actually came to the games, you could tell that they were bringing their friends. Because we would give each season seat holder some free tickets to the first 2 or 3 games or something like that to bring their friends. And, by the third year, we weren't doing too badly. But it was still very frustrating that we weren't drawing, 10,000 people a game. Again, maybe it was wrong to go to the Comets games or the Steamers games or something like that, where they had sold out crowds each and every time. It was just a difficult sell in Los Angeles. It really was. And without the cooperation from the management of the Forum, which I somewhat include my father to that, it was difficult, and it seemed like I was up against a brick wall, that we were never going to break through and make this what I dreamed of making it, and that was a fabulous sport that families could come to, and it just didn't work out. For me, it was too much pressure. I was probably too young at that time, probably a little too inexperienced. But at the same time, I had probably better education than most other people in the league. So, it was like Ronnie and I used to talk about, hey, maybe your dad would let us move to some obscure city where we would sell out every night.
Okay, so let's get into that for a second. And I don't want to go, drag it on too much further, because obviously, you were really only kind of involved with those first 3 years, sort of at the levers here. But I mean, it's clear that you're pulling all the stops, right? I mean, the celebrities, right? We talked with Ronnie about Neil Diamond and Ricky Schroeder and the Laser girls, who are basically, essentially the Laker girls, in a new costume, right? Clearly, you're pulling all of the stops, all the synergies that you can by hook or by crook. But that's actually a very telling comment, though, right? See, I guess you figured out fairly early on that the league needed Los Angeles perhaps more than Los Angeles needed the MISL.
Yes.
Right. And the smaller markets, right, seem to be where most of the fervor really was, maybe because there was only one other team. Like in St. Louis, there was only the Blues, right? There was no basketball team. In a Kansas City, kind of the same situation. I mean, the Kings had left and it was just them, and there was no hockey team. So Kansas City, it was off the charts, right? But in a New York metropolitan area, the Arrows, despite their on-field success for those first 4 seasons, right, were kind of, not quite a draw on Long Island. And then when you add in the Rockets in the New York metropolitan area, they drew flies too, right? And I guess the question is, were you onto something there? Was that actually a real idea to perhaps move the Lazers to a smaller market and maybe fall more into where the MISL success was really happening?
Yes, and I did talk to my father about that, and I said, "Can we at least move down to Anaheim or something like that?" And he said, "That's a really great idea, but that doesn't solve our problem at the Forum. We need those dates for our subscription-based ticket sales, which they had a thing called the Senate seats at the Forum, where it was good for all events at the Forum. And since we brought in, whatever it was, 25 dates or more, 20 some odd dates, he really needed those for the Forum. So he said, no, you can't move. You got to stay here. And I said, God, I don't know. I mean, we need better cooperation from everybody at the Forum. We need, please help us. We need more. If we could get more help, if we could utilize it was nice. And you mentioned this before. It was nice to be able to have Chick Hearn talk about the Lazers on the Laker games. But it wasn't enough. We needed more. And so, I came up with crazy ideas like, if you come to 12 indoor soccer games, you can have a free ticket a round trip ticket to Hawaii. It was all the crazy promotions. We were going to do 50-cent hot dog night, but of course we didn't own the concessions at the Forum. At that time, it was under contract to Servo Ovation or something like that. And they said, no, of course not. We're not going to do 50-cent hot dog night unless you pay for it. I said, well, how much would it cost? Well, each hot dog is basically $3. So if you pay us $2.50, we'll let you buy as many 50-cent hot dogs as you want. And it was like, oh my God, the cooperation just wasn't there.
Yeah, it seems like you're kind of caught between a rock and a hard place, right? You don't have the luxury of being able to find another venue that could be more accommodating, I guess, in terms of a fan base or growing the market. And yet, you've got the beast to fill with the dates and to keep products sort of humming both on the television side and the arena side. So how does your involvement end then? How does Jim come into the mix? How and why does he want it then, given all those frustrations? Does he do that willingly? Is it kind of a engineered transfer, if you will?
Well, it was more that I couldn't take it anymore, kind of thing. I'm mad as hell and I can't take it anymore. And so I went into my brother's office and I just said, I can't take this how would you like to run the Lazers? Because I'm going to resign. And he said, absolutely, I'd love to do it. And I said, okay, then it's yours. Go talk to Dad, And he certainly went to talk to my dad. My dad called me and he said, I am so sorry that I put you through such hell for 3 years. But it is what it is, Okay, let's give Jimmy a shot. And I think my sister Jeannie was not too thrilled about that. I think she felt like she was not even considered. So I think at that time she started running the Blades roller hockey team.
Yes,
and
you're looking forward hopefully to having a conversation with her about that in particular, for sure.
Yeah, and she enjoyed that. And I mean, that was a good sport. That was fun. I don't think it was nearly as fun as indoor soccer, but I think Jeannie still to this day holds a little bit of resentment that I didn't have the right to tell my brother that he could take it over. So when Jeannie found out that Jimmy did talk to my father, or to our father, that she was pretty upset about it, and I don't think she's ever forgiven me or my father for that, without discussing with her first. But heck, she already had her own team in the Blades, yeah, I don't know. That certainly started a family rift, which we've heard about in the media. Where it was difficult for the Bus family to get along, and these were parts of the elements that created that. So lo and behold, now my little sister, she wants something to do. So my dad gave her the circus and rodeo to promote, and Jimmy now had the Lazers, Jeannie had the Blades, and I went back to my musical band and started playing around honky tonks in Southern California.
All right, so let's bury the MISL for a second. Then I want to get into the last couple of minutes we got remaining as to the reincarnation of your sports career. When did you know the MISL was not necessarily going to make it in the long run?
Well, you could tell. I mean, the writing was on the wall. Just because St. Louis did well.
Before you left, do you think, or not until after you left and you could sort of look at it from maybe at a distance?
Well, I could tell going to the league meetings that the way the owners, it seemed like everybody was against everybody else. I don't know if that was because they were not well understood how leagues work or what, but it was constant fighting amongst the owners, battles. I think that most of the owners were not as wealthy as they needed to be to sustain their teams. It just became increasingly difficult to run a team no matter what city you were in. So, for me, I went through all the league meetings in World Team Tennis, so I know what goes on in league meetings, and I have to tell you that the MISL league meetings were probably some of the worst run meetings that I've ever been to up until that time. I know I was young, but now I've been in NBA meetings, league meetings. I've never been to an NHL meeting, but I went to almost all of the WTT meetings and sat next to my father throughout the whole thing. the MISL meetings were, it was all about ego and my team's better than yours, and all I could say, hey, for the good of the league, you need to help some of these other teams, including myself. You can't sustain a league just with 2 or 3 teams that are doing well. And so for the good of the league, I proposed this. And I was, again, I was maybe 25, 27 years old at that time. And I was this little youngster, creating this bad boy image of talking back to these other owners who, were in their 60s and 70s. And, some of them were young, the Lewicki's. I don't know if they really actually owned the franchises, but they were represented there. And, again, actually, I enjoyed the Lewicki's because they brought the youthful energy and the thought of that maybe I was right, that, hey, for the good of the league, you got to help all the teams.
Yeah, interesting. And there's a lot of other sort of dynamics sort of at play there too. Some of it sort of the sports, the soccer's sport, viability in this country as well. I guess where I'm really curious is to sort of hear how you bookmark or bookend, I guess, that story, because I gotta feel that you leaving it all on the field, so to speak, as you did, right? And then leaving, running the team. I'm sure there was a certain sort of wistfulness, I guess, and that you couldn't sort of get it over the hump or make it more successful, perhaps more than you wanted it, more than it wound up becoming. But I'm really curious as to know what you did sort of after that, and then how you got dragged back into the beginnings of the WNBA franchise in Los Angeles a decade later, because that's got to be a pretty interesting sort of turnabout as well.
Yeah, there's a story there. I was damaged after 3 years with him, or 4 years, whatever, if you count the year getting started. It was emotionally, like I said, it was like getting hit by a train and then trying to recover from all my injuries, kind of lick my wounds kind of thing. And, watching my brother run the franchise and just almost hanging my head, because I really didn't appreciate a lot of what he did. After I left, I thought he would do at least as much as I did. He would put in as much energy and strife as I did, but he may not have been as well suited for running that franchise at that time. I know he was ridiculed for his long hair and sunglasses at the league meetings, and poor Ronnie Weinstein had to sit there with him and take the abuse from the other owners. But if I recall, there were a couple of owners that did call my dad and say, "Hey, can you assign somebody else to the team, because I don't know that Jimmy's doing the right thing." And my dad just laughed at that and said, "Well, once you guys do your right thing, we'll get Jimmy to do his right thing."
See, that's interesting. So that's an interesting dynamic, because that certainly then became sort of the dynamic near the league's end, right? In some respects, almost it took your dad to kind of set everybody straight, as the thing was flailing, and said, I'm out. We're done. We've tried. I've given you at least 2 of my my offspring to do my bidding here, to keep you afloat in this league in Los Angeles. And we've given it almost a good decade. And if we're not any further along than when we started, I'm out. And that's where Ronnie then got the the lesson about maybe doing it in the summer and all that kind of stuff, right? But so where are you in all of this? Besides looking at it from afar, I'm thinking at that time sports was maybe just outside of your on your wish list at that point. You kind of probably didn't want anything to do with it for that period of time, or maybe you kind of did.
Well, yeah. Getting back to this league meeting thing, I was instructed by my father, and I agreed with it, that the first order of business from Los Angeles Lazers is I propose that we move to summertime. And then after that, it was all silent. Okay, we're not going to move to summertime. Next. And the next year I'd sit at the league meetings and say, Los Angeles proposes that we play in the summertime. That was kind of almost the going joke, that the first thing out of Johnny's mouth is going to be that we need to move the league to summertime. That, of course, never happened. And I'm sure Jimmy was instructed to do the same thing. But yeah, when it was over, it was over. And I was really hurt by it because I was a fan of the sport. And I thought that, gosh, this is really a travesty to American sports because, outdoor soccer is struggling. This was a great event. And it took, like I said, it took me a while to lick my wounds and get over what I had just been through. And, so I kind of took time off with my music, and I enjoyed that. So I was having fun, but then my dad wanted to get into minor league baseball. And so we started researching to buy into minor league baseball. I think we spent a year in research and it just never worked out. It was disappointing again because I started to enjoy the thought that we would have a little baseball team, outside of the Forum, and we didn't have to play in the Forum. I was very excited about that. But
were you scouting? Were you scouting other sports as well? I mean, obviously, Jeannie and the RHI in the '90s was part of the mix too. But was that a search for some other sports enterprise besides Forum-based indoor stuff?
Well, again, my dad was looking for events for the Forum. He was looking for events to programming for Prime Ticket. And he gave, he was getting ready to listen to just about everything that came his way. In the early days, back in the really early 70s, early 80s, when he was that new NBA champion, franchise owner, Forum owner, he was turning down a lot of events. But now that he had Prime Ticket and now that he had these Senate seats, subscription tickets, he needed more events. So yeah, he set Jeannie to do more research on what we could bring there. Like I said, my sister Janie, I'm sure he told Jimmy to look at some stuff, but for me, he knew that I was not interested in going back to the Forum. It was just bad blood at that time. I was disappointed in so many people that worked at the Forum that I did not want to go back there. So that's why I was the one chosen to look at minor league baseball as a possibility. And again, that would be programming for at least Prime Ticket. but it just didn't pan out. And so I took some more years off, got married during that period of time. And, I was enjoying life, attending Laker games. I was playing hockey at that time. So I got to practice with the Kings every once in a while. I was a goalkeeper, so let me tell you, to play against the Triple Crown in a practice session was the most thrilling thing I've probably done up to that point. So, it was all, the family was feeling better about everything. We were doing well. We were winning championships. The mid-90s came along and we kind of hit the skids with the Lakers, but David Stern had this idea and really wanted to get women's basketball moving with NBA owners. There was a women's league playing at that time. It was doing okay, but David Stern really thought that that he should do this, not only for the case of women's sports, but also it might help the NBA in some way, shape, and form. Again, they would play in the summertime, which my dad just was thrilled about. And, he said, "Hey, Johnny, do you think you'd be interested in women's basketball?" And I said, again, Dad, I don't know anything about women's basketball. And he said, "Well, why don't you start doing your research and let me know if you want to be involved in it." I started doing research. I went to some UCLA and USC women's basketball games. And it was good. I was actually surprised at how good some of these women were. And I went back to my dad and I said, "Yeah, I think I would be good at this. I've learned a lot of lessons. I've been very well educated and groomed for this. I'll do it." And so he said, "Okay, it's done. I'm going to call David Stern right now." And the next thing I know, I get a call from David Stern, and he said, "Welcome aboard." And I go, "Oh, I guess you talked to my father." And he said, "Yeah." So,
so what felt different about this time versus the MISL experience, right? Because I'm sure you opened your eyes wide open, and not sort of wanting to repeat or have to go through some of that. But it feels to me at least one of those things is you've got the full faith and credit of the NBA behind you, for one.
Yes. I mean, that was most of it right there. And playing in the summertime, I thought was a good choice. But also, they had a structure where we basically gave the player salary budget was a number that all teams gave to the league office, and they basically hired the players through the league office. Our only position there was to draft the players. Originally, we were given a certain amount of players so that we could get the league started, which, of course, that's where we got Lisa Leslie from. And, I thought, gosh, this is really good. They're financially and fiscally smart about this. If 0 people showed up at the games, 0 people, our entire budget was $1 million, And so it was like, wow, you can't go wrong here. So all we had to do was get some ticket sales, possibly get some television programming, and and get ourselves some sponsorship. Which, going back to what you mentioned, my dad's sponsorship department was really, truly, probably the best in the league as far as the NBA, NHL. They did an exceptional job with sponsorship. And we were now going to be part of that group. And so, not only was I enthusiastic about how the WNBA was going to be run, they were going to be run by NBA owners who I already knew how to run a league. And also now we have 20 years at the Forum under our belts, 25 years under our belts, and everybody became who they should have been, who they could be, meaning that the experience with the Lazers back in the 80s, those same people were now going, gosh, I guess I should have helped the Lazers a lot more. So now when Johnny comes in with the Sparks, let's help as much as we possibly can, because it only hurts us not to have these minor leagues or these other events in the Forum. So I can tell you that it was a lot different when I came in with the WNBA than it was when I came in with the MISL. These same people had learned their own lesson that more events only helps them also. So, it was just one of those things where, it was like, Johnny, it's nice to have you back, and I was welcomed with open arms, and that made me feel good. That made me feel like this is not going to be another MISL situation.
Well, I guess the one thing I'll just throw out there, and maybe sort of around the corner here, and a couple of championships didn't hurt either, right? So you had a lot of other incumbent benefits, right? A television contract, the NBA, cross-pollination, and all of that stuff too, right? So, but also lessons learned, and I guess this is maybe sort of the big sort of softball question to kind of, put a guardrail on this, is that, I would imagine a lot of other people that you came across in the MISL that have gone, there's been quite a few, right, that have gone on to stunning success in professional sports, right? Many of the Lewicki brothers in particular, right, for example, right? But that league, the MISL, right, was very much in the vanguard, and maybe not until fairly modern times have we kind of sort of recognized it, but the way a game is packaged and produced at the arena, right? The concept around how to promote and make more entertaining beyond just the sport, right? I'm wondering if there are some, or if you did sort of, unwittingly sort of pull some lessons learned, painful as they might have been in the MISL, into your WNBA career, from what you sort of gleaned and or maybe kind of through hard knocks experienced in that league.
Oh, absolutely. I came into the WNBA first league meeting where we got to meet everybody. I came in very confidently. I came in as somebody who's gone through, like you said, the hard knocks of founding new leagues or founding new teams. And it was quite different. It felt good. Like I said, I was very confident in what we were going to do. But again, immediately I started, bucking heads with David Stern, and on several issues, but minor issues, but still, David Stern basically is, I started becoming the bad boy of the WNBA.
Why? Because you were pushing up against the man, so to speak, or you had brazen ideas, or what?
Well, there were very few people in the league office at that time that had ever had any experience in management of a sports franchise. They might have had NBA league experience, but not franchise experience. It's so different when you're one of those local teams that you have to know your city. And when the WNBA was telling us what to do in Los Angeles, it was kind of insulting, truthfully. And so, again, I would say, hey, look, that might work in Phoenix, but it's not going to work in Los Angeles. And what works in Los Angeles might not work in Phoenix. So let's start the WNBA off so that we all have a fair shot at this, so that we're all playing on an equal playing field. And of course, first order of business, Cheryl Swoops gets pregnant, and they give Houston, Houston, what was it? The Comets? Yeah, the Houston Comets. They gave them the first draft choice. Again, it was like, well, is that fair or not? Yes, it's fair because Cheryl Swoops is pregnant. She may not ever play again. Oh, okay, but what if she does play again? Does she go back to the Houston Rockets? I mean, to Houston Comets? Or does she go back into the draft? Oh no, she goes back to Houston. Well, that's not fair. That's not right. So already
that wasn't the David Stern way, right? Mr. Very central command and control, right? And the NBA, right? Very, very top down in that regard, despite, and I can see where, my guess is that, seeing the fledgling ABL, that's the competitor league that was sort of out there as well, right? But, you want to bring that sort of full force of the NBA and all the owners, you're going to get the NBA, right? And that's a little different than the franchise model that you were aware of in the MISL or the Dennis Murphy vision of sports, right? Which is the antithesis of player, owner managers, right? Where there's a centralized kind of approach, right? And that's a real chafe. And frankly, once again, you're in the vanguard here because you look at today's modern day or, a decade or two later at the WNBA, and now there's a lot more of sort of these, call them independent, right? I think maybe half the franchises are still related, if you will, to their NBA siblings, right? But now there's a lot of exploration and or ownership that's outside of the NBA domain, right? So maybe you're on to something.
Yeah, so, I mean, maybe we started off on the right foot for sure. And I was very happy about that. My dad was very pleased about that. But at the same time, there were, a few bumps in the road that the league office didn't quite understand because they had never run a franchise before. Very quickly, Val Ackerman came in as the commissioner. Again, this was somebody who worked in the NBA, but never had experience running a local franchise. So,
or managing franchise owners with their own particular market understandings and needs, right?
Exactly. So, I mean, okay, well, this isn't going to be a cakewalk, but at the same time, I was like, oh my gosh, here we go. This is going to be tough. We're going to have some battles in front of us, but the way the league was structured was, it was really well structured. I mean, it was the right way to do something. So I couldn't complain too much, although I complained all the time. But that was just my way of doing things. I complained about uniforms, as I complained about many things, but it just it was what it was, and I was willing to take charge of this. That first year was disappointing. We played very well, but we lost to Phoenix in a one-game playoff structure. It was just very difficult. So I just thought, okay, well, at least we got through the first year. That's great. Now I start, getting involved in hiring, firing coaches. And I think in my 8 seasons with the WNBA, I had 9 coaches. So it was just one of those things where I felt like I knew what I was doing. I felt like I knew who was going to be trustworthy, who was not, and it was just one of those things where I was going to do my best. I was going to do my part at the league meetings, and I was going to do as best I possibly could to market this in Los Angeles. Again, knowing my grassroots and my guerrilla marketing, that's what we did. We just started going everywhere we possibly could. The players were very cooperative. You could have a player with you at almost any event. Many of them stayed in Los Angeles throughout the off season, and we could use them through for promotional events. Everything was going right. Now, the only thing that we had to do was win, because I knew that if we could win, it was going to change everything.
But you were winning in the early, fairly early going. I mean, 99, 2000. I mean, you were 20-12, and 2000 you had the league best record of 28-4. But there was this Houston Comets dynasty that was kind of hard to crack. But then, as the 2000s dawned, and Lisa Leslie really started to show her all-star prowess, right? I mean, frankly, a lot of your hard work was sort of paid off in spades.
Absolutely. I mean, like I said, those first couple seasons were difficult. I had to get my footing. I had to become the bad boy of the WNBA and make sure that everybody was treated equally. But we weren't. Los Angeles was really given one of the greatest women players ever in Lisa Leslie. And, to have her on the squad was, it just brought everybody together. We became a family. We traveled together. I became very close with the team and the staff. And we all worked extremely hard to make sure that not only did we market properly, but that we won games. And so, being an integral part of the coaching, hiring, and firing, I basically hired the the player who made the very first basket in the WNBA, Penny Toller. Penny Toller became our general manager, and her and I together, I think we put together the right stuff, and we won championships. And we were now, on top of our game. Everything was going right. We were actually getting good crowds at the games. I was still doing my crazy marketing by having a carnival out at the Forum, and prior to the weekend games, because if we played on a Sunday afternoon, I still struggled with ticket sales. So I would have a carnival out in the Forum parking lot. We just did everything we possibly could, and the players appreciated the work that all the staff did, and the staff appreciated everything that the players did. And it was a great family. It was one of the. It has to be the greatest experience of my working career, the WNBA, and I lasted basically almost a decade from the time we announced that we were going to do the WNBA to the time that we sold the team, which I think was in 2008, I couldn't say more about the WNBA and all the wonderful times that all of us had, even though I would buck heads with David Stern constantly and Val Ackerman. It was still one of those things that was great. Great experience. And I'm so happy that the WNBA is 22 years old now or something like that. I mean, I am so proud of what we have done as founders of the Los Angeles Sparks, and all the people that worked with me. I just can't praise everybody enough.
All right, so let's and look, this has been great, and we've almost spent 2 hours together, and it's hard to believe. But let me ask you sort of maybe this wrap-up question, and maybe there's a part 2 somewhere along the way. But I don't want to kill the golden goose at this point yet. What is your thought about the WNBA going forward? And I want to put COVID on the side. I'm going to treat it as perhaps as a hopefully temporary situation, but although sports may look different just after all of this is hopefully over at some point anyway. But the WNBA, what do you think that's its future, its health, women's basketball generally looks like, given your work in those early days founding that thing? And also, similarly, whatever happened to indoor soccer, and can that or could that be a thing at that level for those few years that it was quite the thing ever again, professionally?
Well, I mean, with the WNBA, I was a huge. I was affected by Title IX, which basically said that I think it was during the Nixon era that we signed Title IX, and Title IX gave women equal opportunity in sports from high school and college. So it affected me because I was on my high school handball team, and they said, well, if we don't create a women's handball team, then we can't have a men's handball team. So they basically got rid of the men's handball team, or the boys handball team, whatever you want to call it. And I thought, gosh, Title IX just destroyed my fun. But then I thought, but Title IX is a really great thing. Women should have equal opportunities in high school and college. And when in the WNBA, if you look at the championship banner for the Sparks, there's a Roman numeral 9 in the corner of the banner. And that was put there by me because I felt that Title IX made the WNBA possible in the first place. Because without Title IX, there wouldn't have been the basketball programs that created the players that ultimately played in the NBA. So, that's a little trivia tidbit there. But when I went to the league meetings, I said, you've got to go after young girls. You have to go after even pre-high school basketball players, women basketball players, girls basketball. You've got to go after them. This is a family event. I understand that, there's other aspects. Hey, we got to start promoting to women. Hey, we got to start promoting to the lesbian community. Hey, we have to start promoting to, and I said, yeah, that's all great. And we should do that. But I'm telling you that 80% of our concentration should be on young girls getting ready to go into high school, because this is a great family event. And that didn't come with a warm welcome. When I was proposing this constantly, it was like, yeah, well, maybe families will come out, but they don't really come out on a Wednesday night. So, and I go, that is not true. That is just not true. And in the summertime, we have so many weekend dates that are available in our arenas that maybe we extend the league a month or two, and we'll even have more weekend dates. There's no reason that we have to play within some kind of confine because of the NBA or because of the of baseball or the NFL. We don't have to do that. We're our own league. So let's take 80% of our concentration and go after families. Go after young girls that are interested in possibly playing in high school or in college, or hopefully ultimately in the professional arena. So I'm telling you, it was surprising to me that did not go over with open arms. It was just shocking to me, truthfully. So, but I did what I wanted to do in Los Angeles, and I promoted to families, and we had great groups. We did get to sell out quite a few times, and especially during the playoffs and championships. Yeah, hey, we had some, 15,000 people crowds. Even more than that. I think I'm trying to think what we had at that time. I guess it really doesn't matter, but we were doing what we wanted to do. I accomplished what I wanted to accomplish. And, it took winning 2 championships to finally get the media coverage that I think we were deserving of. We finally got the ticket sales that we were deserving of, and we finally got the praise from the league office that we were deserving of. But more importantly, my dad was just so proud that I did the right thing with the WNBA. However, there was one person that was not very happy about it, and that was Jeannie Buss. Again, Jeannie felt like she should have been the one to have founded the Los Angeles franchise. And that my dad did not even consider her was something that, again, she has never forgiven my father for, or for me, or to me. So, it's the WNBA, as great as everything happened, what it did do was it divided the family even more, which was very difficult because I was so proud of our accomplishments. And, I would talk to Jeannie. I'd go, Guy, you got to come to our games, man. This is so much fun. Hey, help me out. Come work with me. And I said that to all the siblings. But it actually helped divide our family. And so with that, by 2008, 2009, it was like, okay, it's over. Jeannie's now working closely with the Lakers and the Forum, working at Staples Center. Jeannie had enough on her plate, and we just said, hey, you know what, we're going to sell the team. And I was sad about that, but at the same time, I had spent, like I said, a decade of my time with the WNBA. I was very proud of what I've done, but it was time to go. It was time to retire.
And what do you think of the WNBA's future?
Again, I just think that they're still missing the boat on families. I still think that if you have longevity, then somebody who's 8 years old is soon going to be 14 years old and playing in high school.
Yeah, as an aspiration.
And is soon going to be 19 years old and playing in college. And soon is going to be 22 years old and playing pro sports. So start at the 8-year-old level, because you know what? Those are your fans. They're the ones that are going to grow up watching your games. And those young girls need their mothers or fathers or other family members to go with them to these games. And if they have any desire to play basketball, which there are millions and millions and millions of young girls that love playing basketball, hey, you know what? It's only going to take, 5 years, 10 years until they're adults. And they're going to be driving themselves to the games and buying their own tickets. Boy, if you have the longevity, then spend all your time promoting to the 8-year-olds right now, and just be done with it. Don't worry about everybody else. Everybody else will come. Just, it's all about the young people. And, I wish I could say that about the NBA, but the NBA will never be like that anymore. Maybe it would have been back in the 60s and the 70s, but you really can't go to a lot of NBA games if you're a youngster, unless you have season seats, or your dad's company has season seats or something like that. I mean, it's very expensive to go to a game. Thank God that my dad did the right thing about raising the lower bowl and lowering the upper bowl. We've tried to keep that structure in the Staples Center where, I think you can still get a ticket to a game for what? I think the lowest ticket is $32 now or something like that. And at least that's affordable for a family to go maybe 2 or 3 times a season. But you're going to be sitting up at the top of the crowd. I just think that the WNBA has lent itself to young families. It's affordable. The players, there's nothing like. I have never met nicer players than players in the WNBA. So, and they're nurturing. They know where they came from. Sometimes a lot of NBA players forget where they came from. And that's sad to say, but it's true. There's a lot of players that do remember where they came from. And I'll tell you what, those same players are the ones that attend WNBA games when they can. You do see them. Kobe Bryant was one of the wonderful attendees of our games. And you can see why. Because he had little girls. I loved my WNBA experience. I hope that the WNBA lasts forever. It deserves to last forever. It's done right. But again, I still think that most of the concentration has to be on families and young girls.
All right, and then last question. Do you think indoor soccer comes back? Can it come back? It flails around in sort of very arguably minor league fashion, or do you think that was just a ship in the night and that time has passed for that sort of level of hot fun in the wintertime?
Okay, I'll give you, if you have a little bit of time, I'll tell you the secret behind something that probably Ronnie, I don't know if he did say this or mention it to you, but when my dad gave up the Lazers, Ronnie said, hey, gosh, I don't know what to do. Am I going to go back into ticket sales for basketball? Your dad gave me an option to go into the ticket sales department or the marketing department. And that was really nice that, at least he didn't just say, goodbye, Ronnie, don't ever come back. He gave him an option to work within the organization. But when I talked to Ronnie, I said, Ronnie, why don't you do this? You know the story of Dennis Murphy. I've told you it time and time again. And I'm telling you that you could create your own league and go out and sell franchises, and you could structure the league. Now that we have the WNBA structure, we have the MISL structure, we know what not to do, we know what to do, and structure a new indoor soccer league. It's one of the best sports I've ever seen, if not the best sport I've ever seen. And you can do this. Get a lawyer, work it out, structure it, and go out and talk to all our friends in the NBA, people you met in the MISL, and go and sell franchises. Start with an 8-team league, maybe on the West Coast, and lo and behold, he actually did it. He said, I am going to do that. Do you think your dad would want a team? I said, of course he'll do a team. He still needs his programming. He still needs dates. And sure enough, that's how the Continental Indoor Soccer League was formed. It was because Ronnie and Johnny got together and said, what am I going to do in life? And I said, start your own league. It's easy. He won't say it was easy at all, but that's what happened. And I'm sorry that the CISL didn't last, but it's still one of the best sports I've ever seen. And I told Ronnie just maybe a month ago that, if I had the time and you have the time, maybe what we should do is together we'll do it again and we'll create another indoor soccer league. But we'll do it with the rules and regulations that I think we should do. Changes in how play is done, changes in how the pay structure is done. We would pay the players through a central office, just like the WNBA. And truthfully, I'm still thinking about it. I'm still thinking about creating a new indoor soccer league.
Why do I have a feeling that this will not be the last of our conversations about the Buss family and Los Angeles sports? I just sense that there's so much more to explore in so many different dimensions. I'd love to have been a fly on the wall with Jerry and his conversations with Jack Kent Cooke and how the whole deal sort of came about. Obviously, the franchises and the sports stuff that Cooke was involved with, and how Jerry really sort of became intrigued by it and just framed it as being within the realm of possibility. I'd love to get into further understanding of that for sure, either with Johnny or his brother, certainly with Jeannie. We would love to have a chat with her. We're in contact with her folks, and at some point, hopefully relatively soon, we'll finally get a chance to get into the Roller Hockey International stuff that she was a part of, and of course the LA Strings stuff that she was part of, all instrumental in what is now a unbounded and unchallenged success running the Los Angeles Lakers. Those early days, almost foundational, I think, to that success. And we look forward to having a chat with her at some point about all of those and then some. And our pal, Ronnie Weinstein, thank you for putting us in touch with both of these Buss family members. And we look forward to getting into more of that kind of stuff as soon as our planets align, for sure. We've got lots of great stuff coming up across the entire realm. So many different sports and teams and situations. Lots of great guests coming up. And we encourage you to continue our journey with us. The best way, of course, is to subscribe. Why don't you, to this little podcast? Just put us in your feed, however you get us. Rate and review us, why don't you, please? We love those 5-star ratings, wherever you can do that. That helps tweak the algorithm a little bit, and others like you who might be intrigued by this content, we would appreciate that to no end. Of course, if you want to find out generally what's going on with this show, the best place, of course, to go is our website at goodseatsstillavailable.com. All of our old episodes and all the ones to come will be domiciled there. They're there for you to stream right off the website. You can download them, you can share them, you can do whatever you want with them. And of course, that's also the place for sending us some email. You can do that directly, of course, at hello@goodseatsstillavailable.com. If you'd like to follow us on social media, by all means, please do so. You'll find us on Facebook. You'll see a little page devoted to us there. We're on Instagram at Good Seats Still Available. You will find us on Twitter at Good Seats Still. And of course, on the website, you can find a little tab there to opt into our weekly newsletter. Just give us your email address and we'll get you signed up and all that kind of good stuff. And of course, our continued thanks to our pal in Atlanta, who puts our pieces together each and every week. You know him, you love him, you can't live without him. His name, of course, the great Dr. Jerry Payne, Payne Audio Excellence. Thank you so much, sir, for your kind twiddling of the knobs this week. We thank you so much for listening, of course, as we do each and every weekend. Take care. Please take care of yourselves, and we'll see you next week. Bye-bye, everybody. Love you.